Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Crafting and Crime Daily. This afternoon, I'm going to recap what happened on day 6 of the trial of Chad Daybell. He is on trial in Idaho, Boise, Idaho, for the murders of Tylee Ryan, JJ Vallow, and those are the children of Lori, his wife. And he's on trial for the murder of his former wife, Tammy Daybell. 3 murders and some insurance fraud. We haven't even gotten to the insurance fraud here, but yesterday and today, Melanie Gibb is on the stand. So this is just going to be part 1. I'm going to get through as much as I can today. Then I will finish it up for you and have it for you on Monday. And yes, the Arizona rancher, they're still deliberating. But as soon as I get a verdict, I will bring it to you. In any case, let's talk about Melanie Gibb. Now, she was a part of this religion, the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is what Chad and Lori, that's the origin of their beliefs. But really, they went far astray from that. And Melanie was going right along with it. Yeah. And she mentioned some other people that were as well. Alex Cox, Lori's brother, Lori's niece, Melanie Boudreau. There was a couple of other people, a woman named Zulema, who eventually marries just days or before Alex dies, marries Alex. And there was a couple of other ones. And they would have these small gatherings at Lori's house, and sometimes Chad would be there and sometimes he wouldn't. And they were learning about the teachings of Chad Daybell, or, you know, the Bible according to Chad Daybell. Anyway, okay. She first met Chad in the summer of 2017. She said it was an event that they had. It was sort of like a camping type environment, and he was speaking, and it was just a little get together, and that's where she met him. Now, she had read his books, and Lori had read his books. So she was at some other event speaking, doing some teaching, and Lori was in the audience. So after she was finished, Lori came up to her, and after that, they became fast friends. So she and Lori, this is in early October of 2018, just not long after they met, they all decide they're, you know, the women, they're going to all get in the car, and they're going up to St. George, Utah, to this Preparing the People conference, which Chad was speaking at. Now, they've read his books, and they, you know, which are supposed to be works of fiction, I might add. I don't know if anybody told them, hey, this is fiction. Yeah. But yeah, I'm just saying. So anyway, they all go to this conference, and that is where Lori meets Chad and Chad meets Lori. Now, she didn't go so far as to say she's the one that made the introductions, but I think she was. So she said that they appeared after that several times. Her observations were that she would see that they were in deep conversations and that they really liked each other and seemed to be very attracted to each other. And so they were spending a lot of time together at this conference. Then on the way back, Lori, you know, they're driving back to Arizona, and Lori's telling the girls and Melanie how Chad and she were married in prior lives. Prior probations is what they call it, or prior lives. And that they had married in previous, you know, more than one probation. So now this seems like a very intelligent woman to me. And when all is said and done, she's asked, you know, were you buying this? Well, I mean, that's how I would have asked. The prosecutor was a little more formal than that. And she's like, she goes, I always had this gut feeling like, and she says, and that I learned later on I should have gone with my gut, that this was not right. Yeah. Yeah, you should have always go with your gut, Melody, always, because this is a bunch of hoo-ha. Anyway, so then she mentioned that Lori, things were progressing between her and Chad, and Lori decides she's going to move down to Idaho with Tylee and JJ so she can begin her missions with Chad, I guess, so to speak. She mentions that in November of 2018, this is before Lori moves to Idaho, they had a gathering at Lori's house in Arizona. Now, during this gathering, all the people were there that I mentioned. They're all at her house. She said there's probably about 20 people there, so a lot of people we didn't mention. They're all at Lori's house. She's married to Charles. Charles is out of town, and Chad is staying there with Lori. Just saying. There was other people that were staying there as well, but so was Chad. They talked about, she said that during this weekend get-together, Chad was ministering, I guess, to the people at Lori's house. But they would often, Melanie often saw them together talking very intently and very interested in each other. Okay. Then she was told by Lori that Lori and Chad had been sealed in the temple. Now, I'm not sure how they accomplish this, because getting into a temple is not such an easy feat. Like, you have to sign in. These people are both married to other people, but they've got themselves into a church or temple and were sealed. I don't know if that's equivalent to a marriage, but I'm thinking in their eyes, yes, because they were sealed in other probation. So they wanted to get resealed. So it was Chad's teachings, part of his teachings about this whole light and dark. Now, this is the first time that the jury is hearing about light and dark and getting it explained. That light means you come into this world and you have a contract with God. And if you're dark, you've come into this world and you have a contract with the devil. And the dark can take over the light. Yeah. And light becomes dark when the dark takes over the light. There's that feeling in my gut again, Melanie. I'm sorry. It's just so weird. I just don't get how people buy into these cult nonsense, but okay. So Lori would ask Chad, like, well, how long have people been on this planet? How long have people been in other lives? And Chad would have all these details, In other words, like, he told Alex that his whole mission was to be Lori's protector, both in past probations and in this life. I think Melanie, she was asked to name the different names that Lori had, and she could remember the James and Elena names that they had. And she mentions that James was one of Jesus's apostles, one of the 12 apostles, and that Elena was his wife. Okay. And that's supposed to be Lori and Chad in a previous probation. She mentioned a few others as well. But if you wanted to know if someone was light or dark, you had to ask Chad. And then Chad would tell you if that person was light or dark. Yeah. So Lori's mission, we know what Alex's was. It was to protect Lori. Lori's mission was to gather and seal women. I can't read my own writing. Oh, it was to gather and lead women to be part of this 144,000. It all has to do with Revelations and the apocalypse and Jesus coming back to, that there's going to be 144,000 good people, and Lori's going to find them all and bring them all together. So then they started doing these castings that they believed, for example, that Charles, Lori's husband, was possessed by a dark soul, and it was Ned Snyder. And this all came from Chad's mouth. Chad said he had been possessed by Ned Snyder, and if you get rid of Ned Snyder, once you get rid of that darkness out of the body dies, unless another spirit goes into that. So they casted out Ned. They all get together in the kitchen at Lori's house. They cast out Ned, and then they cast another one comes into his body. Iblos comes into his body. Then they cast it out, that one, and another one comes into his body. So Lori, actually, before Lori goes to Idaho, Melanie at one point went up to visit Lori in Arizona and stay with her for a few days. And this was in whatever month it was that Charles Vallot was killed, within days. So she's staying with Lori, and Lori wakes her up and says, "You've got to leave. Charles is on his way, and he's going to kill me." And Lori's like, with Melanie's like, "What? I can't leave you." And she's like, No, Alex is coming. He's my protector. I'll be fine. So Melanie leaves. What do you know? Charles comes. He gets into this tussle. He's killed by Alex. And she saw what Lori within days after that murder, and she said she was not grieving. She was happy. One of the things Lori had told Melanie was that Chad could not get a divorce. If he did, Jesus would take away all of his powers, so to speak. It's not the word she used, but essentially all of the priesthood stuff that he's been granted through Jesus would be taken away if he got a divorce. All right. So then Melanie mentions that she goes down to Rexburg, Idaho, to visit Lori after she moves. And when she gets there, this guy that she's now married to comes with her. So they're there. She wanted to do a podcast with Lori. They've done it before, obviously a religious podcast. So present at the home were J.J. Vallow. She asked, "Where's Tylee?" And she had met Tylee before. So where's Tylee? And Lori tells her she's over at BYU studying. Never mentions her again for the rest of the weekend. And then she saw JJ on the 22nd. And that evening and Lori had told her, JJ, just a few days before he got here, he became possessed. Yeah. We're going to have to deal with that. So I'm telling you, it just gets weirder and weirder. So that night, because JJ is autistic, and he was a little probably overwhelmed with all the people that were there, and he was not it wasn't handling it well. So Alex takes him over to his apartment, but then he comes back later with him, and he's appeared to be sleeping on Alex's shoulder, and Alex says, "I'm taking him up to bed." But he didn't sleep in his own room. He slept in Lori's room with Lori. That is the last time Melanie sees him for the weekend. When she wakes up the next morning, she's like, "Where's JJ?" And Lori talks about she's going to send him to live with Kay Woodcock, his grandma, in Louisiana. Because she can't handle him anymore. She can't do it anymore. So the other thing is that during that night, before Melanie gets up in the morning and wants to know where JJ was, during that night, Melanie is sleeping with her soon-to-be husband in Tylee's old room, which she said the furniture was in there, but there were no clothing. No clothing items were in this room. I guess she thought that was odd. But she doesn't question them. Like, how do you just believe all this stuff without question? I don't get it. And I want to know, does she have a deal with the government to testify about all this? I bet she does. I just bet she does. because I can see her as an unindicted co-conspirator. I really do. Anyway, so she talks to Lori several times about how Kay wants to take care of JJ, and so she's going to send JJ down to, apparently, Kay flew in and she went to Lori went to the airport and turned JJ over to her, and then she flew back to Louisiana. That's what happened to JJ. So then the weekend of this, the week that, or that day that they're doing this search at Chad Daybell's property, I'm sorry, it's the first time they searched the apartments, not the property, because that's in June. So earlier in September or October, when they're doing the wellness checks and they're checking to see where JJ is, Lori tells the police that JJ is with Melanie. So Melanie gets a phone call that day, and from Chad, and Chad says, Lori's going to call you and the police are going to be calling you. When they do, tell them that JJ is with you. And she's like, JJ's not with me. JJ's with Kay. And he says, just tell him that JJ's with you. And then Lori checks in with her later on that day and says, go to the movie Frozen and take pictures of a bunch of kids and just say you have JJ with you. And then what do you think Melanie does? The police call her and she's like, yeah, he was with me, but I sent him back home. What? So now she's feeling really guilty. Now she's lied to the police. So now she said that just so happens a friend of hers who is a lawyer called her for just out of the blue for no other reason, nothing to do with this, calls her and she's talking to this friend of hers, this lawyer, and she happens to mention all this stuff about Lori and Chad and the missing kids. And he says, you should really have a wellness check done on JJ. So he actually calls the police on her behalf. And I don't know what arrangements were made, but at that point, she tells the police, the real story. Yeah. Anyway, so then she starts cooperating with the police. So here is a phone call that she made that was recorded by the police. She calls Chad and Lori, and she is trying to get Lori to tell them where JJ is, because the police want to know where's JJ. And I want you to hear this phone call. I'm cutting this off after about 8 minutes into the phone call, because it goes on for probably another 15 minutes. After Melanie wants to read a scripture to Chad and Lori, then they get into this whole argument afterwards. Anyway, listen to this first part of this phone call.
Sweet Melanie.
Hi, Chad. Hey, Lori. Hi.
Hey, let me put on speaker.
Oh, okay.
All right.
We're enough with the phone. How are you guys?
Okay, how are you doing, babe?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks. I was wondering, where are you guys?
We're just hanging out.
Hanging out? Are you in Idaho?
We're in Idaho.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to ask you a question, if you don't mind, Lori. I want to know, you remember we talked about JJ going to Kay's house, and you told me they went there, and now he's not there? I was wondering what happened.
Well, I had to move him somewhere else because of her actions. So
Was she doing something? Like, was she trying to come get him or something? Or like trying to kidnap him?
well, she said that lots of times before, but
Okay. When I asked Chad the other day, I was like, hey, where is JJ? And he said, for my security, he didn't want me to know. So is there a reason I should be in danger to know where he is?
no, it's nobody. It's his danger. It's the danger that there's people after me.
Okay.
So
if you knew, that puts you in a danger.
Well, just in a bad position.
Yeah, bad position.
Everybody, if they don't know anything, then they don't have to say they know.
Right, so you're just worried, okay.
I'm just to keep him protected and
We'll keep you protected.
keep everybody else.
I appreciate that. Well, I was wondering why you told the police why he was with me.
I just needed to have somebody that so I wouldn't have to tell them where he really was, because they were going to tell Kay where he is.
Oh, yeah, so is it, you think it's like your family, or, you know, like your family, your dad, or, you know, those
Well,
people?
family, well, not my whole family, but as you know, most of my family is working against me and
Yeah,
with her, basically.
yeah. Is JJ safe?
He is safe and happy.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Are you afraid of anything? Like, are you afraid to tell me that you're just afraid that that I could be in danger? Like you're, you know, like I don't, like if I knew, like how could that hurt me? I don't understand how that could hurt me if I knew where he was.
Well, I'm just not telling anybody so that nobody has to say where he is or get questioned to where he is, so I can keep him as safe as possible.
Yeah. Okay, I hope that he's okay. I hope you guys are okay. But I did have a question that I asked Al at one point, your brother, if I wanted to know, you know, like where he was, and he said I did not want to know, and that he could not be found. So what does that mean?
I don't know if he would say that, but it's the same story. Like
Yeah.
I don't even want Al to know. I don't want anybody to know, so that nobody has to be worried about it. I mean, nobody has to be questioned about it, so he can be safe.
Yeah. So how long are you gonna be away for? Like are you ever gonna be able to come out and come back to society again? Or are you gonna keep, you know, like come back? I mean, like, what does that look like?
I will do whatever the Lord needs me to do every day. So
I just wondered if I was ever going to see you again.
Absolutely, you will.
Okay, so maybe when they're done chasing you, you'll be able to come out again, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's a ridiculous thing for them to be working with Kay to find me. There's nothing that's gone on that's, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're working with her in some dark capacity. The police are working with her in some dark capacity. There's no reason for them to be after me in the first place.
Yeah, has she threatened you at all?
Yes, lots of times.
Oh boy, like what did she say?
Well, it's in emails and everything.
So like she said she was going to come take him, or she was.
There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Nellie.
I know it sounds like it. I'm just worried for you guys because, you know, he's missing, and you know.
I know exactly where he is. He's perfectly fine.
Okay, well, I hope so. I have a scripture I wanted to share with you, if you don't mind.
I'd love it.
I was thinking about some of the things you guys have gone through, and I saw this scripture today, and I want you to.
Let me ask you a question. About the scripture. Okay. So, did Alma turn himself into King Noah, or what was he required to do?
Well, King Noah was incredibly wicked.
Yeah.
So he fled his evil ways, which is adultery and living riotously and breaking all the commandments. It was a very unrighteous man.
So it's interesting, right? So it just goes on and on. They're debating scripture, like for another 10, 15 minutes. They're debating, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about this? Well, Jesus did this. And Jesus, you know, I'm like, oh my God. Are you saying you never believed us? And Melanie's saying, my gut was telling me this wasn't right, and I wasn't going with my gut, and I should have. So then Lori's telling her, well, you might not be safe because we've told you all this stuff, but you really shouldn't know. Jesus doesn't want you to know it unless you're with us. And just this wild, just the whole rest of the conversation was just crazy. Just, yeah. Anyway, I didn't want you to have to sit through that entire thing. Yeah. So that's where it ended at lunchtime yesterday. And then the cross-examination or the direct examination continues after lunch. Cross-examination was today. So I'm going to review all that over the weekend. I'll bring you that on Monday. So I do want to talk about, like, at the end of the day, something really weird happened because I fast forwarded to see how it ended. There was another hearing, like an emergency hearing, or I guess it was scheduled. I don't know. And there's these two different lawyers sitting at the table. Now there's Chad and the defense lawyer. They're there. And where the prosecution usually sits is these other two lawyers. And it was this one lawyer who the night before trial, which was Easter, essentially, he, and the judge talks, he says, let me give you guys a little flavor of what's going on here. He says, the night before this trial is supposed to start, or before we start, going to start picking the jury, we get a phone call that this lawyer here has filed a motion to intervene, and he's filing it as attorney for the defendant, Chad Daybell. So then he goes through some procedural rules, and he says, you filed this as a lawyer, and as a lawyer, you have to back up your pleadings. You can't hire another lawyer to represent you on your pleadings. This is stuff that you've sworn to. So I'm not even going to talk to your other lawyer. I don't want to talk to him. I'm going to talk to you because you were a member of the bar and you filed this. And what the judge says it ruined his weekend. His law clerk that does all of his research, she had gone home to be with her family for Easter and wasn't going to come back till the next day for jury selection. And she has to leave out of church. She gets called out of church to go back, and they have to respond to this thing. It's crazy. Now, I never did understand, by the time they set a microphone up on this guy, I didn't understand what the heck he was doing. So apparently he's saying it was late night on a Friday night. He got this idea that he would file, and the judge is like, but do you represent the defendant? He goes, no, I don't. He said that was a Scribner's error. So then what he admits to is that he was using an old form that has where you just fill in the blanks, and where on his signature line, underneath the signature line, it has attorney for the defendant when you just fill in the name of the defendant. And he goes, I forgot to take that out. And he goes, so the judge goes through the whole pleading. What about on page 3? What about page 4? He's like, listen, it was my bad. I'm not the attorney for the defendant. He says, and he goes, well, who are you filing this on behalf of? And he says, myself, as a person. I want to intervene. He wanted to continue the trial. And he says, I thought maybe I could help Mr. Pryor with the case. And I'm like, what? This is insane. I've never heard of such a thing. Never heard of such a thing. Just crazy. And the judge was pissed. He was so pissed. He's like, all right, here's your sanction. I thought he was going to report him to the bar, and he might report him to the bar. But he said, for filing this frivolous motion and ruining your weekends and, not having any right to file this motion because you don't represent any of the parties to these proceedings, I'm going to get a bill from the prosecutor's office for the amount of time they spent having to respond to your pleading. I'm going to get a bill from my office, and I'm going to get a bill from John Pryor's office for all the time we had to put in responding to your frivolous pleading. And you're going to have to repay all that. He says, I'll look at, make sure it's a reasonable amount of money, and then you're going to have to repay it. Ooh. So People tried to interview this guy as he left the courtroom, and he wasn't giving any statements, but just the weirdest thing I have ever seen in a case, ever. All right, so part two, either tomorrow or Monday, on this more of Melanie Gibbs' testimony, because it's fascinating. Yeah. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll be live on Sunday at 11 a.m. Central Time, where I just show off everything I've been working on during the week. It's more of a crafting thing, but we talk some crime. If you want to show up and hang out with us, we'd love to have you. Take care, everybody. Bye.